Chair, with regard to the questions about the MYPD2 and MYPD3 price paths relative to Nersa's estimate of the future price path. Was it based on actual application? Yes, Chair. The graph reflects the price path as it would have been had the percentages applied for by Eskom been added as an increase to the price in the year preceding that, in the final year preceding the particular MYPD2. So the price in the last year before MYPD2 started was used as a base, and Eskom's curve reflects the 35, 35, 35 on that, and then for MYPD3 it used the actual price of the last year of MYPD2 as the base and added 16, 16, 16. So that's how the Eskom curve was reflected in the application. So the question was, what about the sales? In the application, Eskom did consider for all of these MYPDs the potential impact of price elasticity. It commissioned independent macroeconomic studies that assisted with that. And as indicated also here in the previous answers, Eskom was cognizant of the fact that, as every independent specialist report have confirmed, that there are numerous factors driving electricity, and dominant factors being, for instance, GDP growth and so on. So Eskom, with all the best evidence and information, did factor the potential impact on volumes into its applications. Of course, if as we know from the RCA process already, if the volume is lower, it could result in under-recovery of fixed cost. And of course, if in the long term it is confirmed that there's a new price path, one would expect the IRP to also respond, a new volume path, the IRP would also respond and require less capacity to be built into the future, and in that way the industry would avoid the fixed cost as well by not incurring the fixed cost for the new assets. So the question was, if MYPD3, 16 and so on, or any of those MYPDs, if they were approved, would Eskom have asked for inflation-related increases? Plus minus, yes. In that context, in that particular existing context, if, for instance, if an additional cost is added, such as if government says, as they did in 2010, we are now adding an electricity levy or environmental levy of 3.5 cents, and obviously, if the price path that was previously modelled did not factor that in, then the price path would have to respond to that additional cost. With regard to the World Bank study and the hidden cost, just to clarify, the World Bank refers to hidden cost as a cost that is hidden from the consumer, in the sense that the consumer does not know about it because the consumer only sees the price that it's paying, and the typical consumer would not know about the true cost behind that product. So yes, did the World Bank overestimate the staffing? No, what we're saying is the World Bank did a very credible study where they erred was in calculating the potential savings on the staffing by omitting to factor in 80% of the network size. So with regard to everything else in the World Bank study, as far as we can ascertain, it was a very credible, thorough study. The one thing we dispute is the estimate of the saving or potential saving on staffing with regard to networks and generation. There was a question, is Nersa bound by the price path of 2009? Don't they make a fresh price path with every decision? Yes, Chair, we agree that with every decision, Nersa will review all the facts and evidence at its disposal every time in a fresh approach. But and similarly, Eskom also submitted an application every time based on a new bottom-up cost build-up of its costs. But as indicated with the 75% fixed cost business and assets that were not less, but were actually growing, more assets than before, one would not expect the price path to not differ much from a previous calculation. And in that sense, we are all guided by the Electricity Regulation Act, Section 16(1)(a), that provides the legal requirement for the allowed revenue. And if you apply that, that's where we come to as the outcome. And that is also confirmed by the IRP, the recent IRP in the text.
Eskom, firstly, let me start by saying that when you talk about what you believe are the costs that Eskom should be entitled to or to be allowed to recover, you are not bringing to the attention of the regulator, or at least you're not taking into consideration, one, the efficiency standard that must be applied. So even when the law requires of us to allow for the cost incurred, only efficiently incurred cost that must be allowed. So you didn't bring in that aspect, so that where we differ and where Nersa has not allowed certain costs, it is due to that standard that has been applied. That is one standard, Mr. Yubel. There's another standard that is a standalone, the prudency threshold. It is very different from the efficiency standard that we must apply. So those are the things that did not come out when you were talking about cost reflectivity. So we're not saying that go through it, but in your presentation, you didn't factor in the issue of efficiency standard and as well as the prudency standard. You're simply stating that Eskom, we're not allowing certain revenue and therefore there's an issue of cost reflectivity. It cannot be argued that the cost reflectivity, even when there are costs that are viewed as not efficiently or prudently incurred. One of these things is also what Eskom has also brought before the regulator last year. Cost around associated with mismanagement of coal contracts. All of that, with all of those adjustments, they have not been made because Eskom said it will come back to Nersa, those things. So there are certain costs associated with that which we still haven't, have not been adjusted. Mackenzie, the 1 billion. So those are some of the costs yourselves that you have to recover, but you're not coming forward about those, and you're simply saying that it's not cost reflective. So what about those costs? So those are the kind of things that are missing that we would like Eskom to come forward on.
Yes, Chair, the one particular slide I tried to address that by showing that on existing costs, by applying the formula as in the methodology and as required by the Electricity Regulation Act, on existing costs, Eskom estimates that the price required is 125 cents, and Eskom indicated that even if one were to assume 15 billion per annum of OPEX and primary energy related potential efficiency gains, the price would reduce down to 116 cents. So what Eskom was saying is that at a level of price which then assumes top quartile decile international performance in every performance, at least 116 cents. So with regard to the cost overruns on the new build, yes, we addressed that in Nelspruit, indicating that yes, they will come to a level of about $3,000 per kilowatt overnight cost, and yes, ideal state for a non-FGD could have been probably around $2,400. So Eskom showed that cost overrun. But if you calculate that cost overrun back into the impact on the price, it's all within that number of the 15 billion that I indicated on the graph. After factoring all of that in, the efficient cost reflective price based on prudent and efficient cost would still be at least at that level of 116 cents, which also is what the IRP independently calculated and stated in the text just preceding preceding that particular graph. So with regard to the 339 billion that's missing from the balance sheet, Eskom is not claiming and does not intend to claim past revenues in the future. Eskom is indicating that where we are now, the balance, that is the main driver of the shape of the balance sheet at the moment. But where we are now, if the price responds the way Eskom is applied to, over time Eskom will be able to deal with that without having to add a premium to a price that is calculated as cost reflective based on prudent and efficient cost. Eskom would still, over time, be able to redeem that debt and the principal as well as the interest. With regard to that same question of the new bill, when Nersa did its forecast path calculation in 2009, Nersa did not assume any cost overruns on the new build or delays or anything like that. They also did not assume the renewable program between 1 to 3, and yet Nersa's bottom curve and Nersa's up and lower boundary is still where we are today, even without Nersa assuming any of those costs. So with regard to the World Bank study, we are not, I'm not sure I got the question on admitting to overstaffing. Eskom is saying no, the one error that we believe is in the World Bank study, in an otherwise very credible and robust study, is the World Bank's calculation of the overstaffing and the potential savings on that, based on the error of using only 1/5 of the network size as a driver of their calculation. With regard to the final question on what changes have Eskom made given lower prices, there is a certain amount of cost that is required to be incurred in order to generate, transmit and distribute electricity. Every one of these credible sources and references I mentioned, as well as every energy expert I've ever spoken to, confirms that it is simply not possible to generate, transmit and distribute electricity at 6.5 US cents a kilowatt hour in a financially sustainable way. They range internationally for a similar system as Eskom's will start at 8.5 to 9 cents and above. Even factoring in Eskom's advantage of coal, that even with all the problems we've had with coal, it's still 2/3 of the international average price. So when I discuss this with international energy experts, they say to me, what do you think, Dion, is unique in Eskom? How do you think, what have you discovered that you think is so unique to enable you to generate, transmit and distribute electricity at 6.5 cents and nobody else in the world can do that? What have you found that nobody else has discovered? It's just not possible. There is a minimum amount, and if you want the electricity, you have to incur that cost. And even Nersa's own guideline with regard to prudence and efficiency makes the reference that the norm for prudence and efficiency is reasonable cost based on benchmark utility.
I think now the members was trying to ascertain what question were answered, that was being answered. That's fine, Mr. Yu, but we're not, I think the issue of the benchmark. The benchmark must be to the question that we're assessing. The benchmark, we always test whether this is an appropriate competitive benchmark. Whether you can say there's this new entrant IPPs, remember the IPPs, they also pay costs that are determined by S in the first place, those connection costs and all of that. So we're going to be looking at the competitive benchmark. So we'll invite Eskom to then add and say, what do you believe, and that is the question, what do you believe is an appropriate competitive benchmark and why so? I think the question is clear. We don't want it to be answered now. An additional question just to clarify information already provided on the benchmark. At the end of the day, that's the kind of analysis that will be done. Hence, we give you the opportunity. Mr. Kasim?
Yes, Chief, we will come back with that in Gauteng. But I think just another important principle, and just to highlight, as the Chair said, where is the McKinsey recovery? Now, our applications, both the RCA and the MYPD, must align to what the methodology is saying. So just for illustration, the McKinsey recovery of 902 million plus the so yes, this amount will be reflected in this year's RCA, which will be submitted next year. Now, I think it's very important, and we'll demonstrate that in Gauteng, to make sure we must understand, and we mustn't mix the periods in which certain items are applicable. So yes, in terms of the RCA, that recovery will be reflected, but I can't put it in this RCA submission because the recovery didn't happen last year, it only happened this year. That's an important principle that we highlight in the closings of Gauteng. Thank you.
Mr. Kasim, and then when will on the cost associated with the coal contracts and buying from expensive coals, using the words that we used by ESCOM?
Yeah, Chair, we're going to present that revised items where applicable in Gauteng.
Thank you very much. May I then, because some of the information did not come out, I just want us to make sure that ESCOM is aware of what information to be provided, and also the Nersa team to make follow-ups and make sure that they've taken this into account. With regards to the RCA, where what is missing with regards to the revenue requirement and the shortfall linked to sales volumes, what is missing is ESCOM demonstrating whether it was capable of generating those sales volumes given its productive capacity constraints. I think that's the key question that needs adjustment, because I see that you maybe didn't get the question. The question is, we want to ascertain whether ESCOM on the overspend is still not coming forward. And that is quite important for us, given the fact that we are sitting with the shortfall or the variance in sales volumes. So you didn't produce enough, or as shown in the decision, the MYPD 3 decision. So if you could provide us with that explanation, we're asking it for the second time now to demonstrate the overspending on the OPEX. Then the other question that would like ESCOM to come back to us on, I think, is the issue of the argument on the cost reflectivity versus the efficiency standard and the prudency threshold or standard that needs to be applied, including the capacity constraints faced by ESCOM over the period, as well as the other costs associated with the issues of procurement and overrun costs. I think those are all the key factors that need to be taken into account. And then the other question that did not come out, well, the forecast that was presented today, it indicates that it was done over a period of 9 months. So we would like to know what is the scenario as we speak. Because it's quite old, and therefore it will need to be, we need to check whether the situation and the views are still the same. But also what is lacking in the sales forecast. Before you budget, there's no information presented with regards to the customers in those 3 major sectors that were mentioned. And there are certain questions that must be put clearly to those customers, because the question of price was not put to the customers. At least we are not seeing from the presentation. So if you provide evidence on the question of price so that we can see we don't base decisions on assumptions, we base decisions on what customers are saying. So from our side, it's a fact-finding exercise that we are doing. So on issue of price aspect, it was never put to customers, at least based on the information before us. On the issue of substitutability by customers, cutting sales of consumption from Eskom and maybe taking it elsewhere, that question of substitutability has not been factored on the forecast as well, to the extent that we want it. Coming out from customers, what will they do? Will they substitute the volumes and look elsewhere, or come up with their own solutions? Those kind of questions did not come out. The third thing that did not come out on the forecast is the ability of Eskom, and this is critical, this part, is the ability of Eskom to produce or generate those sales volumes. I think that is quite important. Hence, we also said that the production plan must also be revised, because we're now in the situation where Eskom has already indicated in its application that the energy availability factor was sitting at 78% in terms of the application, but it has deteriorated to 63%. So when you do the sales forecast, that aspect is crucial, and it has not been taken into consideration. So again, we emphasize this point, I don't know how many times now. So we expected now, when we do the presentation on the sales forecast, all those three critical aspects must come out, and I hope that we don't have, because this is the last one now before Holiday, and we are hoping that the presentation and the information will be much different and give those factors, and also the revised application. So we are really emphasizing it for the last time, because we expect a clear response now, an adjustment in the Holiday public hearings. So I think that those are some of them are the economic questions, obviously the substitutability, and also checking from the customers, and really we need some economic evidence, because that's the standard that we are going to apply from our side to see what then happened. And then when we talk about elasticity, what is not coming out, also I think it was in Mpumalanga where we emphasized the sectoral price sensitivity analysis. I think here it was quite broad. It did not, remember the elasticity, it must look at the price of Eskom and then your own demand. It doesn't look into what is the output, and that's it. You can look at it because you want to look at the macroeconomic effect, but we're looking at the industrial economic analysis, which is your microeconomic effect. So we're not jumping into the next one. So I think most of this analysis today, it didn't measure the elasticity properly, the way it's supposed to be calculated. We didn't get that. Number two, what it didn't do the sales loss analysis. There is no other. When you do the price elasticity provided to Eskom, we stated to Eskom that we want to see it for that price sensitivity or responsiveness. So the tool that is used for elasticity of demand is the SNP test, because it estimates the elasticity of demand. So it's the small but significant non-transitory price increase. That's what it's not coming out, which we will also do from our side, but wanted to test what is the submission of Eskom in that regard. Then we'll have our own. So we've summarized them in that manner, because those are the elements that did not come out, which we are asking Eskom, because you will have also from your database some of these variables, how you tested them. So we will do our own independent verification. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have exhausted and provided some further guidance in terms of the missing information, and we're hoping that Eskom then will, this is in addition to those ones, since they are really not coming out, and we're hoping that we've clarified them sufficiently so that Eskom knows what it has to provide. Can I confirm, Mr. Kasim? All right, thank you very much. We are going to break for tea, and the Break is going to take 15 minutes. Thank you. 15 minutes. Tea break.